Hi there. Well, I wanted to take less than 5 minutes to talk about the silent treatment or being ignored. I also wanted to test out this ring light. I have a new one and a little stand that holds my camera so it doesn't fall over during a video, and just see if I could do this with absolutely zero makeup on my face and still look human. All is well so far, so here we go. So when you think about having a conversation with somebody or an issue with a person and all of a sudden they become silent or they ignore and they don't want to further engage in conversation with you, and they give you the silent treatment, and you might have experienced this from your parents when you were little, where they gave you the silent treatment and you knew they were mad. Sometimes you'll experience it from partners or even friends. So what happens with that? What's going on when somebody's giving you the silent treatment or ignoring your text or ignoring calls and just will not engage you any further? Well, number one, it could be an avoidance technique. So they're using that to avoid painful emotions, to avoid dealing with a situation or continuing in that conversation, to avoid dealing with something that comes up in their self or another. Number two, this is a learned coping strategy. Where that's how they learn to cope with things, is to shut down and to be quiet and to not say anything else, whether that be because what they've said got them into trouble or what they said got them, unloved or abandoned or rejected. That could be a coping strategy. Number three, it could be self-protection. They're afraid of conflict. They've had conflict experiences in their lives, make them uncomfortable. Now they're fearing conflict, so it's better to shut down, get away from the situation, disengage. Number four, this is a way to control. This is a way to control the outcome of the conversation. It's a way to kind of gain an upper hand and feel like they're in control. It's a way to, feel more safe and secure in that conversation. I think I'm on number five. The next one is punishment. So they're doing this as a form of punishment. I think parents do that sometimes to their kids, or people do that to their spouse as a form of punishment. Maybe if I shut down and give them the silent treatment, then they'll change their behavior, or maybe they'll think twice about doing this again, whatever the case is. This is psychological abuse when it is used in that form to control a situation, to manipulate, to try to punish somebody. It can be very damaging to the other person in that relationship. What is usually happening with that person who's in the silent treatment is they're not doing the calm, rational thing by ignoring and by becoming quiet. They might for a time, because we're going to get into the positives of this, but what ends up happening is they're in an emotional immaturity. They cannot handle their emotions. They're not mature enough to deal with the emotions that are being kicked up due to the conflict in the conversation or the confrontation or just the content in general that's coming up. Also, it's a lack of emotional intelligence. So they don't really know how to define their emotions. They maybe not in touch with what they're thinking. They don't know how to process the mind and the body together and the emotion and the thought that comes with it. So therefore not able to speak, not able to convey what they're really thinking, what they're really feeling, and put that out in a nice manner, right? And then, so another thing people would do this is to avoid screaming and yelling. Great. So the pros of the silent treatment or the ignoring or shutting down conversation is to cool off, to take space, to create a pause. Yes, absolutely. If you're too heated and you're a confrontational person, you definitely need to take a pause, take a step back, and not further engage until you have calmed down. So, whatever end of the spectrum you're on, a pause is always great. A pause to stop and think about what you want to say next, what you really mean, to not have a bunch of verbal garbage coming out of your mouth that's actually abusive. So, it's like, oh, well, I'm giving the silent treatment to prevent myself from abusing somebody verbally and mentally. That could be true, but you're also creating more abuse in another direction. So what happens to a person who is trying to engage you in that conversation? They start to maybe push or chase you down or, try to, continue to engage. And then they end up like stressed out, anxious, could be in a panic. They start to feel like they have no control because they can't get you to respond. So then it creates a cascade here of two people and turmoil. So each person is responsible for handling the situation in a different way. So if you're a person who is always finding that you're chasing people down to try to get them to communicate with you, then you may decide that the best option is if they're backing off, then you go ahead and back off and you wait until they're ready to engage. But why do you have to wait? You should not have to wait that long. A conversation in a healthy way should be, I am going to shut down. I really feel like that this conversation is no longer going to be effective and it's going to turn really bad. So I need to take some silence and I need to take some space. But I will get back to you and we will re-engage in this conversation. That is an appropriate way to take a silent treatment, or to ignore, to wait, and to take a pause. The person on the chasing end that wants to push to have the conversation now has to respect that, but yet they are assured that they will have a time and that person will return. And if that person isn't ready to return to it when that other person actually is, then that has to be addressed. That person's not ready. It shouldn't be on one person's terms, the way that this works in a relationship at all. So, if you are a person who does this with the ignoring and the silent treatment, you might want to take a look at all of the reasons I listed above and try to work on some of those things, because it's definitely damaging and abusive to other people. And it's damaging yourself by not changing that pattern and getting out of that poor way of communicating. And the person who's always having to endure this from somebody, don't do it. Set boundaries and say, if I do not hear from you, if I do not hear an engaging part of your verbal that says, yes, I will return to this, or yes, I do need space, and you keep ignoring me and then talking to me when you feel like it, I'm not going to talk to you then. I set a line in the sand and I set a boundary, and I don't want that type of relationship in my life. So, that could be triggering for you to do that because that's not part of your pattern. But the other side of the coin, it has a whole different set of reasons why somebody would chase somebody down and not just back off. So, just wanted to put a blurb out there. I feel like this is really important in any type of interaction. And I see and experience a lot of the people shutting down and not talking or discussing or communicating. And there's a shit ton of reasons why. That doesn't mean that I or you have to excuse that their issues. You can just say, I don't choose to engage with you anymore then. I have to have some self-respect and boundaries within myself.